What up, guys? Today we're going to be reacting to Death Battle's Frieza versus Megatron. I will be reacting to the fight in this video, so don't worry about that, guys. Also, I do want to mention that I do think that they're going to have Megatron beat Frieza because whenever they have a Dragon Ball character, they usually downplay Dragon Ball characters quite a bit. Yes, I would say more recently nowadays they have given more of respect to the Dragon Ball character's power and been more, honest with their feats and their power scaling, though I still do think they downplay it a little bit. And sometimes when they do these matchups against characters that you might not assume that are that powerful, usually they have some very powerful other iteration of them in some other form of media like comic books or anime or video game and stuff like that. So sometimes that can happen, and that's the way I usually that's what happens when it comes to Death Battle. Not saying that this is always the case, but it is usually the case. So I'm leaning more to Megatron, even though I want Frieza to win in this fight. Also, I want to give a big shout out to a couple of new subscribers of mine. One by the name of Lil Rucky, the other name Merlin Hans Hiveki. Sorry if I mispronounced the last one. And April Moore. Big thank you to you three for subscribing to this channel. It means a lot. So yeah, like I said, I think Frieza is going to lose, but I do want Frieza to win. And I want to know more about Megatron's feats, because I have heard some absurd feats from Transformers characters like Megatron and Optimus Prime. I think it's from like a comic book series called IDW. And they're supposed to be like, people are saying that they're universal to multiversal levels of power. I don't know about that, but let's just see what they showcase, because they'll probably have more since they have researched it. So yeah, let's get into it.
Deep in the bowels of outer space lies a monster so cruel, so callous, so evil that the universe itself trembles at his approach. Behold, the mighty Lord Frieza.
Oh, he's adorable with the horns and that floppy tail and the... Genocide? Oh, awesome. And he's laughing. Cool.
Frieza's diminutive stature and faux gentility were intentionally deceptive and rooted in a surprising place. In response to the Japanese economic bubble at the time, Frieza's design was meant to evoke real estate speculators. Series mangaka Akira Toriyama has described such speculators as the worst sort of people. Yes, really.
I guess you could say Frieza is more than meets the eye. Oh, wait, shit, that's later.
Much is unknown about Frieza's alien race and heritage, only that he and his father were born as mutants with abnormally high power levels.
Oh, like how the doc said my blood alcohol level was 0.8 straight out the womb. Frieza was so crazy strong that unlike most Dragon Ball characters who transform to get stronger, Frieza transforms to get weaker. So he doesn't, like, accidentally nuke a planet. Only intentionally.
With his father's empire and army at his beck and call, Frieza would cross the universe, conquering worlds one by one, and selling them to the highest bidder. Just like real estate speculators.
And if anyone objected, he'd just kill them, their entire family, and everyone they ever knew. Just like real estate speculators. While he usually lets his weird, multicolored alien grunts do his dirty work for him, Frieza's not afraid to throw down himself, especially if some spiky-haired space monkeys start getting too uppity for their own good.
Frieza's strength comes from his innate understanding and manipulation of his own ki, or life energy, which he can use to enhance his physicality or manifest into projectile attacks.
Like his classic Death Beam, Death Ball, Death Wave, Death Cannon, Death Saucers. Yeah, I'm sensing a theme here.
Frieza can move mountains with his mind, fire laser beams from his eyes, create ki force fields, and he even learned to sense the ki of others through sheer observation alone. He's fast enough to keep up with Goku's ki attacks, which, scaled to the ki he absorbed for his spirit bomb against Kid Buu, could move across the universe in less than a minute. That would be over 17 quadrillion times the speed of light.
Okay, this is the first thing I disagree with them here. The other statements that they made, nothing too crazy, is just basically explaining his character, but I don't agree with this. They're using the speed of his energy attacks, which I think is a smart thing, because they don't usually do that. They just say how powerful their energy attacks are, but it also depends on how fast they are, because if you're going to be firing off an attack, even if it's insanely powerful, if it's not fast enough to hit the opponent, it doesn't really matter. But he's using the Genki that, Goku, when he uses the Spirit Bomb for the Genki Dama, and the energy that transmits out of it, it came all the way to the, Supreme Kai's world from Earth, which was insanely far away. And do agree with the speed of like the energy that I was getting there. I don't have a problem with what they're saying there, but the problem I do have with it is the fact that it's Genki and not actual Ki. Ki and Genki are two different things. Genki is basically health energy, whereas Ki is life energy. Ki, you can increase it as you get stronger and the more you're able to control your Ki manipulation in general. Whereas Genki is health energy. It doesn't matter if you're a human or a Saiyan or whatever, you're going to have the same levels of health energy. You can't increase the only way you can decrease your health energy is if you're unhealthy and sick, and the only way you can increase it if you're just healthy, but that doesn't have anything to do with actual like strength, like being strong. You don't have to be super strong. You can be healthy without being very strong. So that doesn't really matter, and that would be basically stating that the energy that the humans were transmitting can move at that insane speed. But let's be honest, if a human was able to convert their energy in the Dragon Ball world, even like somebody like Spopovich, who is firing off their blast, it would not move at that speed. But they're able to transmit a Genki all the way to Goku that fast. Unless their argument here is they're saying is that Goku doing, the Spirit Bomb technique, he is the one pulling it at that speed, which doesn't make any sense. He holds it out and he's collecting it, but the speed of it is just going from them. So I don't really equate this to their energy blast. If you're going to use it, just use their own energy attack, like Kamehameha or a Ki blast. Like, there's a great calculation somebody made, I forgot where it was, where they did one with Cell. When he did his Kamehameha at Goku did the instant transmission and teleported right behind him. And since, teleportation, depending on what connotation you go by, is it really instant or is it how fast a photon can travel between a Planck distance? It doesn't matter. Even if you go for that one, which would be less impressive, his blast was still able to go like hundreds to thousands of miles in the air, actually more than that because it was in deep space. So it was able to go an insane amount of distance right after Goku used it, because he used the instant transmission while it was about to hit him, and then he ended up behind him. But by the time he ended up behind him, the blast was far away. So they could have used that as a calculation, or just, the ones where Master Roshi blew up the moon and Piccolo blew up the moon, and just go based off of that, because that's already insane. Because I think Piccolo's one was like around 1/3 the speed of light. But this I do not count, because by that logic, it's basically saying of these humans, because this is mostly energy coming from humans that transferred over there, if they were to fire Ki Blast, it would move at the speed, which it doesn't. The energy that accumulates for the Spirit Bomb is not the same as a Ki Blast. Those are two completely separate things. I don't know where they got that from. So I'm not saying that his energy attacks at the point where he is right now with Black Frieza, or even before that in the Resurrection of F. I'm not saying that their energy blast can't be that fast. Most likely I wouldn't say it is, but to go based off of this, is the argument is pretty bad. I don't really agree with it.
And he's gotten even stronger and faster since then.
You know you're a badass when you can stroll into Planet Vegeta, a planet filled with people whose only higher aspirations involve murder and hair gel, and talk shit like you own the place. And he got so paranoid about one of them getting strong enough to kick his ass that he blew up the friggin' planet.
Considering Planet Vegeta has 10 times the gravity of Earth, this would mean it likely has 10 times the mass and 100 times the energy required to overcome its gravitational binding energy and destroy it. That's over 5.3 Yoda tons of TNT.
And that was in his weakest form.
Okay, people have gone for this calculation, and then they've gone all the way up to small star level for Frieza in his final form in the Frieza saga. But the problem with this, what they stated, is they stated that the mass would be 10 times that of Earth. It really depends, because it depends on what planet Vegeta was made out of, because depending on the gravitational formula for planets and stuff, it can increase due to two things: mass and size. Mass is basically all the elements and matter that's accumulated into a certain object or whatever, and the size obviously is how big it is, right? Now some planets have smaller size but have a higher sense of mass, because they might be mostly rocky and less watery, because the more water it has, the lighter the planet is going to be. The more rock it has, and the more heavier metals than rock, like iron, gold, titanium and stuff like that, other planets are going to have more other minerals or less of them, so it's going to fluctuate the size of it. And I also saw another calculation of this. At the smallest it would be have 10 times the mass of Earth at the smallest calculation, because they said, actually technically they said it's not possible, because for it to have 10 times the mass of Earth, basically meaning it's the same size as Earth, but it weighs 10 times more, it would basically need to, what's the thing called? The planet would mostly need to be made out of plutonium and stuff like that, which wouldn't really make sense. It's clearly out of rock. So it would have to be made out of plutonium. So for it to be actually as heavy, have 10 times Earth's gravity, it cannot be around the size of the Earth. It has to be far bigger, meaning the mass would be smaller, but the size would be bigger. Now that actually makes the energy output higher. So like it really depends. They're saying that it will be 100% 10 times the mass of the Earth. Not quite. It could fluctuate between size and mass and the equation, and depending on where you go. Now, the lowest calculation you can have is it's the same size as Earth, but with 10 times its mass. Which, like I said, if there was a planet like that, it would be mostly made out of plutonium and uranium, because those are the heaviest elements that you can have. So it would be impossible for it, or something even more than that, which would be impossible for a planet. So it's more likely that it doesn't have that much of a mass compared to the Earth. But it does have more, but it's also bigger. It's bigger, so it can make the mass a little bit less dense, because if it is too dense, then it'll be kind of unrealistic or impossible to have. And even though this is fiction, but like I said, the smallest calculation would be 10 times the Earth's mass or 100 times Earth's energy output. But from the other calculations, it can go up to 1,000 times bigger, even tens of thousands of times bigger than the Earth's amount of energy it would take to destroy the Earth. So this feat at the very lowest would be 100 times that of the Earth, but that's the very lowest. If you go with other calculations, depending on the fluctuation, because they never said Planet Vegeta is the same size as the Earth. I think it is bigger, because Vegeta and Nappa literally stated that the Earth is small. They stated this planet is very miniature. And Nappa was like 60 by the time that, or I think 60 by the time he came there. So he was around like 30 or 40 by the time planet Vegeta got destroyed. And Vegeta was a kid, but he still knew it quite well. So they would know the size. So the fact that they consider Earth very small, and they lived on a planet that was the same size as Earth, why the hell would they say the Earth is a tiny planet when Planet Vegeta would be the same size? So it's more likely that Planet Vegeta is massive, and most of the planets they've gone to is massive, so Earth is very small. So I would say that the energy output is past that of 100 times, because depending on the size. And there's more calculations. I forgot where it is. You guys can look for that up on Google itself, but I'll talk about it a little bit later towards the end of this video. Depending on how I feel about it. So yeah, let's get back into it.
Too bad he kinda missed a spot. Or several, because a bunch of Saiyans survived to fight another day. Space genocide just ain't what it used to be.
This would come back to bite him when he was finally forced to confront the earthbound Saiyan Kakarot, and accidentally ended up being the reason he turned into the legendary Super Saiyan.
Like the albino dildo he is, Frieza has survived being pounded by Broly for over an hour straight, crushed by Goku's Spirit Bomb, and then split in half, consumed by an exploding planet, and left afloat in the vacuum of space.
He can survive without the vast majority of his body, though unlike other Dragon Ball villains, he can't heal on his own.
It didn't help him that much after he got his ass sent to hell, but because of that dragon in his balls, he was back at it again.
And with just 4 months worth of training, the first time he'd ever trained in his entire life, Frieza was able to achieve a new transformation capable of surpassing the Super Saiyan, Golden Frieza.
That's a level of laziness I aspire to, Wiz. DeviantArt Frieza here lets him keep up with Super Saiyan Blue Goku and Vegeta.
A significantly weaker Super Saiyan God Goku could blow up the whole of Universe 7 in a punch clash with the God of Destruction, Beerus. And the shockwaves of their punches were able to reach the edges of existence in only a few seconds. Over 270 quadrillion times the speed of light. And that is before so many years of power-ups and training between then and now.
Totally crazy, but nothing compared to his new.
Okay, so this has been a debate quite a bit, and I'm guessing that's what they're going based off of, is since the clash created the shockwaves that were able to travel at that speed, that means that Beerus and Super Saiyan God Goku at that point were equivalent to the speed of the the shockwave itself. We've seen Surf Bones talk about this. I've talked about this. I think there's other people that have talked about this quite a bit because this would give an insane boost to their speed. And that's the only reason they'll mention it, because just talking about a shockwave traveling very fast, okay, what the hell does that have to do with anything? But yeah, they would be talking pertaining to the speed itself, saying the speed of the shockwave was able to travel that fast and they're equivalent to that speed. I do not agree with that. I have mentioned it before. Just because the shockwave was able to go that fast doesn't mean that they were moving. Yes, they can fight in that time, but that has nothing to do with the distance and stuff. It's just dumb. It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't really make any sense, and there's no real comparison to say that they're at that speed. And like I stated before countless times, the reason why I don't believe that is because of Whis himself. Whis is the fastest being there. He's bar none the fastest in the entire universe, even now. And remember, Whis took around like 3 hours to travel from one end of the universe to the other end of the universe, and it took him like almost a whole day to go from throughout 3 universes. Yes, you could say that's a lot, but remember, he's going outside of the one universe and then just going to another, and then he's going to the Supreme Kai's world. He did go to through 3 of them to go from 7th to 10 and then back, which is very fast, but still not as fast as this. If it took a couple of seconds to go to that edge, then it wouldn't have taken that long. And yes, you could say, well, they were probably on, the Supreme Kai's planet in Universe 10 for quite a while. But they really weren't there for that long. Goku got into a fight a bit, and then they're just inspecting a little, and then they left. So they didn't really, do anything that much on that planet there, if I'm being honest. So I don't really agree with that. Like I said, I know there's a lot of people that disagree with it and say that's not the case and stuff like that. Whis was able to come to Earth really quick in the Raleigh episode. Let's be honest, that was just BS, because before that, every time when he tried to go to some place, it took minutes. It took 26 minutes to go from their world to King Kai's world, which is less of a distance than they would be traveling this. So I would not put their speed at that level because I think it's too absurd, but I do think they're ridiculously fast and way faster than a lot of people put them at, but not to that extent.
And greatest form.
A transformation capable of surpassing Goku's Ultra Instinct and Vegeta's Ultra Ego, their peaks at this point. A transformation even stronger than Gas, who was wished to be the strongest in the universe.
He literally said F you to the Dragon Balls. This is Black Frieza!
The all-seeing Oracle Fish had prophesied the coming of the universe's strongest, and perhaps he was talking about Frieza all along.
Come on, give us another prediction! Oh, Wiz, I think you're gonna die. No, for some godforsaken reason, he didn't use his newfound power to kill those pesky Saiyans. They were right there, you moron!
In fact, he once committed the archvillain's greatest sin and teamed up with them to save their universe and beat Jiren, a being comparable to the gods of destruction.
Because no one's allowed to destroy the universe but him.
And that's a promise he means to keep. This almighty emperor will continue to rule the universe with an iron grip and a heart of ice. Or you live long enough to see yourself become the villain.
Or you live even longer and become an 80s toy commercial. This is Megatron.
In Cybertron's ancient past, the planet...
Okay, it says, our primary source for Megatron is G1 continuity presented by the 1980s cartoon and IDW comics. So yeah, IDW is where I think their biggest feats come from. There was a comic book YouTuber named Danco. He has some pretty shitty videos. No disrespect to him, but his videos of comparing who would win in a fight in characters, it's pretty bad, and he's been very well known for having pretty bad statements in those videos. But he himself made a video talking about Optimus Prime being stronger than Superman. I didn't check it out, but he said that he was stronger than him, which is a pretty big statement to make. I don't know if I'll agree with that, but I have heard people state that the IDW comics version of these characters are insanely powerful. I don't know about the G1 version, but apparently they're using both, so it's going to be using the high-end feats too. But they put them at universals to pass that to multiversal and stuff like that, which is powerful. But Dragon Ball had that too. They had Beyond Universal in the first arc, and after that they would be way past multiversal. Some people might argue what level. I would say at this point Goku's low complex multiversal. I would say actually that in the Tournament of Power he's that level. We don't know where he's at now. I don't know where I could put him specifically, but that's all I can say for that. But yeah, that's where they would use it, so that's good. So if I hear somebody saying, well, they didn't use the comic, well, they mentioned it themselves. They might not use all the feats, but they'll probably use some of them, at least.
And it was ruled by the Functionist religious order, which decreed a Transformer's natural-born alternate mode determined their role and status in society, rather than letting them choose for themselves. Born into this repressive caste system, Megatron of Tarn dreamed of something more.
So this giant Hasbro toy robot, only $5.99 at your nearest Rite Aid, wrote a manifesto on peaceful dissent that got popular with the oppressed Cybertronian working class. So much so, in fact, that the Senate tried to have him assassinated. Whoa, politics alert!
After surviving that brush with death, Megatron was convinced that peace could never be an option. The only path left to overthrow the crippling social order was violent revolution.
So were the Autobots originally the bad guys here? Optimus Prime? More like Optimus Crime. Never say that Megatron wasn't committed. The civil war he started between the two groups lasted 9 million fucking years. And again, remember, toy robots.
He was aided in his war efforts by his immensely powerful fusion cannon, a giant laser bazooka that can hit targets from 12 miles away and level a small town in a single shot. These projectiles are so fast, they're able to exit the atmosphere from ground level after only a single second. By scaling the distance of the Earth using the angle of this shot, the fusion cannon's projectile must be moving over 4,200 times the speed of sound.
But, like me, the fusion cannon needs a little time to reach.
Okay, so first of all, the attack destroying a city, not that impressive. That's something you can see all the way back in Dragon Ball. 4,200 times the speed of sound. Kind of impressive, but not really that impressive. Dragon Ball characters are way faster than that, even in Z. And the calculation that they use, which I don't agree with the speed calc that they used, he would be leagues above him. There's no way that this blast would be able to hit him, even if it did have enough power to damage him. Which, like I stated, it's good that they're actually doing calculations for the speed of their attacks. But I think in the comics, because they did use the animated version, maybe it was a movie or older show. I've never really seen the old show. I've seen more of the newer ones, like the early 2000s one, and I think the mid 2000 one, which was mid 2010, like 2010 stuff. That one was a really great one. There was also a newer one they had like in Japan and stuff. It was like a 3-part series on Netflix. I don't think they got the third part out though, but it was great. I do like it. I think it's interesting, but I think there's probably more impressive like speed feats with his attacks in the comics, especially the IDW one, than the animated thing. I think the animated thing is going to be a far slower. But from what they're showcasing, this attack, even if it did have the power to obliterate him, it would never reach him because it's too slow. He would be dodging it casually.
Charge between shots. So Megatron's got some tools to keep the job going. He can close the distance with his Energon mace and block blows with his Energon shield. It helps that Megs literally fought as a gladiator before his stunt as a revolutionary.
Megatron can fire lasers from his eyes and arms, launch buzzsaws strong enough to slice through solid rock, fly through the air, and open up a force field known as a panic bubble.
Now, it might seem like a huge flaw that it lets enemy combatants inside, but that's only until you realize it won't let them back out again. That's when the panic part comes in. Megatron's not trapped in there with you. You're trapped in there with him.
Megatron's Cybertronian body is strong enough to match the Autobot leader Optimus Prime, who can toss around oil tankers weighing hundreds of thousands of tons. And Megatron's metallic hide was tough enough to survive an explosion so massive, it launched the entire planet of Cybertron through space.
By taking a look at Cybertron's mass and how fast it was sent flying to get its overall kinetic energy, Megatron must have survived a blast equal to nearly 4.5 ninatons of TNT, enough to annihilate a small star. He can even keep up with Decepticons like Starscream.
So that blast, some of the feats that they used weren't that impressive, like the oil tanker and then the blast going at 4,200 miles the speed of sound. It isn't that impressive, but then they had that one, which was pretty cool. But Frieza's one, it was quite a bit weaker. It was like on the septillions of tons, and his one was on the octillions of tons. But even with that being said, that was Frieza's first form, whereas this is like more of his, like, I guess, since there's no final or base, whatever, this is just his regular form itself. But it's still impressive, it's just not on Frieza's level.
Who can fly across the galaxy from Earth to Cybertron at hundreds of thousands of times the speed of light.
And he wouldn't be a Transformer without being able to transform into various vehicles. A tank, a stealth bomber jet,
and a gun! Just a gun. Walter B-38, in fact. I'm sorry, Wiz. I know he's this tragic revolutionary corrupted by the cycle of violence or whatever, but that is the funniest shit I have ever seen. What does he have, like his Deceptive buddies point him at people and fire?
Sometimes. He can fire himself too.
Oh my god. That looks even sillier.
You may be laughing, but Megatron is no joke. By utilizing space bridge teleportation technology, Megatron can establish a remote link-up to a nearby black hole and teleport the antimatter it produces to his location.
Through his eyeballs!
Should matter and antimatter meet, they will be mutually annihilated in a brilliant release of energy defined by E equals mc squared. It doesn't matter how durable the matter is, it will be destroyed at the subatomic level.
As Megatron's war for control of Cybertron dragged on, all of his highfalutin ideals started to fall to the wayside.
In essence,
Okay, so they mentioned him having this teleporter that can connect to a black hole that has antimatter spewing out of it, but it can transmit it to himself and basically shoot out of his eyes. Kind of like Cyclops. There's like the lasers he shoots out of his eyes, they're not lasers, they're apparently kinetic force, and it's from another dimension, and his eyes basically have a portal to that dimension. He can't close it, so he has to wear certain glasses that basically stop it from opening up. But basically, you can get that kinetic force from another universe that hit it with people with it. So he's kind of doing that, but with a black hole spewing on antimatter. Now, their statement is true that antimatter, when it comes into contact with positive matter, it's not an explosion. It's basically scientifically when positive matter and antimatter touch or collide, they basically erase each other out, and it does it pretty quick. I don't know if it's instantly, but it's pretty insanely quick. And they said it bypasses durability. So I think this is going to be his biggest advantage. Because even with the more impressive feats, like of his speed being 100,000 times the speed of light, and his durability being over like 10, I keep on saying 10 because octillion sounds like 10, but octillion tons of TNT, I forgot what the exact number was. Even though that's more impressive, it's not impressive enough to beat Frieza. They're not really using the IDW comics that much, I'm guessing, because I'm pretty sure they would have more impressive feats from what I've heard from the the fans. I haven't checked out the comics themselves because it was too much to go into, but I definitely do think that that's going to be his biggest advantage in the fight, because it's going to bypass his durability and all of his strength and stuff, and it's scientifically it doesn't matter how durable you are, it's not going to help you out. But there are two tricky things about that is not going to really go in Megatron's favor, and I'm going to get into that right now. So yeah, the two things that I would say for an argument for Frieza, because yeah, you could argue that his antimatter, lasers can basically negate his durability, and even though he's stronger than him or whatever, he can hit him with it and it could overpower him and basically obliterate him, right? But there's, like I said, two problems with that, but also there's another thing I want to talk about, and it's the fact that a lot of times fictional worlds, like these fictional characters and stuff like that, they don't really follow real life science. And in real life science, yes, positive matter, if it comes into contact with antimatter, it does not matter how powerful the positive matter is, or how durable or how dense or whatever, it will be erased, because that is just how it works. That's just how it, I call it a chemical reaction. It's not a chemical, but you know what I mean. But that's just how it works. But remember, these are fiction, and sometimes in fiction they don't really take everything that is scientifically accurate serious. So it really depends. Sometimes we have characters in other fictions that have antimatter powers. They should be untouchable. They should be one of the most powerful beings, and they are very powerful, but they're not unbeatable. There's a lot of characters that have antimatter that have hit the opponent, their person that they fought, and they've been able to handle it, which doesn't make any sense, but that does happen. I just want to get that out there. Not saying that that's an excuse for Frieza, because we've never seen that happen in Dragon Ball, but there are still two ways that he can bypass it. One is the fact that it really depends on how fast it's moving, because the cannon that he fires off is not that fast, which is ridiculous, because their speed, he can move at 100,000 times the speed of light, 100,000 times the speed of light, but his cannon can only move like 400 times the speed of sound, which is way slower. How is their energy attacks way slower than their actual speed? It's not going to make really much sense. And compared to somebody like Frieza, even with their messed up, even if I ignore their calculations with their insane, absurd speed boost that they gave to Frieza, even if I ignore that and go with just my speed calculations, Frieza would still be way too fast for that attack to hit him. So it really depends on the speed, unless if his lasers or his antimatter lasers move faster. It really needs to showcase how much faster it would need to move to be able to hit him. Even if it was moving at the speed of light, it would not be fast enough to reach Frieza, so Frieza could casually dodge it. Or the second thing he can do, and many other characters can do, is he can create an energy barrier around his body, which we know they do in Dragon Ball, and they mentioned it in this video. So they might state that later on, but he can create an energy barrier which would protect him against it. And the reason why it'll protect him is because the energy barriers are not made out of matter. It will be made out of, you know, I guess like a force, which forces aren't really matter. And since it is ki, which is not really physical, it's metaphysical, and it's more like, you know, I wouldn't say spiritual, but it's more like non-scientific. It's not like, you know, real science like matter is. You can argue that it wouldn't be made out of matter. It was just, you know, some energy field. So he could either dodge it because of his insane speed, or he could just deflect it because he can form an energy barrier around himself and protect himself from the antimatter specifically. So yeah, you can use those two kind of arguments.
There used to be a point to the war. Now, war was the point. His only goal left was to rule Cybertron with a literal iron fist.
That's where Megatron's greatest weapon came into play, his mind. The dude is a strategic and tactical genius who's always thinking 10 steps ahead.
He's fought powerful Transformers like Grimlock, Predaking, and the Decepticon, a being with the power of an entire evil universe behind it.
He and Optimus have even fought Nova Prime and Regenesis Shockwave, both of whom could utilize the energy of that same universe.
Megatron once sealed himself inside an Omniglobe and commanded 1,000 real-life battles at once, funneling every iota of relevant information into his brain at the same time. The sheer deluge of data would be incomprehensible for anyone without that supercomputer brain.
But all that robot ass-kicking ended up as a draw, and the only true loser was Cybertron.
With the planet in ruins and its civilization extinguished, the Cybertronian Golden Age was long over, and the vanguard of its destruction was Megatron,
who's now a crusty Saturday morning cartoon villain with a voice that sounds like he smokes 40 packs a day and a hate boner for his boneheaded second-in-command, Starscream.
After count.
So it says right here, antimatter was stated to be able to destroy half a planet. So some of you guys might be thinking, well, you stated and they stated that antimatter, when it comes in contact with positive matter, just erases it, but it can't even erase a full planet. It also depends on how much he's able to pump out, because it depends on the volume. It basically has to be an equivalent ratio of mass. So it's like, you have, like, let's say 100 positive matter, just for argument's sake, and you have like 50 antimatter, it's not going to be able to wipe out all the 100. It's only able to wipe out the amount that it matches. So he was only able to pump out like around half of a planet's worth of antimatter. But it doesn't really matter, because that's not the point of it, because it's not about durability. It's more just about the measurement and the volume he can generate out. And Frieza is not that big. He's not the size of half of a planet or a whole planet, so he can still completely obliterate him. But like I said, Frieza has a speed, so if it does like touch his skin, let's say it's touching him and it's obliterating his body, he can literally realize it in like hyper speed and then dash out of it. So he could probably lose a limb and then just evade it.
Countless millennia of a humiliating stalemate with his Boy Scout rival, Megatron's brilliant mind finally turned inward. He remembered that his early writings advocated for peaceful conversion and free thought instead of domination.
It took you 9 million years to remember why you started fighting in the first place? Would the memory get lost in the cloud?
In what was possibly his...
I just want to talk about it a little bit. It has nothing to do with the fight itself, but it's kind of funny to me that he has such a crazy supercomputer brain, which makes sense, he's a robot. He has all those like different scenarios he can go through in battle scenarios, but he can't even remember what he was fighting for. Like, how do you... I get it's 9 million years, but still, you have a supercomputer brain that can go through all these simulations, all this stuff, but you can't even remember what you were fighting for and what kind of a person you were before this, and, the reasoning. It just seems ridiculous in that regard.
Most surprising tactical move yet, Megatron saved the universe from annihilation as an Autobot.
What?
He realized that after millions of years of indefinite war, the ideals that he fought for, freedom, justice, equality, had switched sides, and Megatron had to as well.
Turns out there was more to this supervillain than met the eye, because true to his nature, Megatron transformed.
Run the data through all possibilities.
It's time for a death battle!
Greetings, noble warrior of planet Cyber whatever. I, Lord Frieza, claim this world as my own. Cheer for me or face annihilation.
I have fought for my planet for eons. I would rather see it turn to ash than reside in your filthy hands, organic scum!
I love it when they monologue back. Pity. I'll have to construct a new mothership from your corpse. What's wrong? Is that clunky robot body too slow to keep up?
My wit should more than suffice, you blithering ponce!
Where did he go? Huh? Doesn't this just always happen? I give it 5 minutes.
My planet! Behold the mighty Lord Frieza, ruler of a dying planet. My planet. Where is your army? Where is your ship? So powerful, and yet you will wander the depths of space for eternity. All because of me! What a fool.
You despicable cretinous worm! I'll torture you until your screams can be heard in the vacuum of space!
Die a fool's death!
You will die by my hand!
You fool!
Cybertronians must kill them all.
Wrong again, Frieza. It was actually 1 minute and 10 seconds. Idiot.
Megatron's ruthless resilience may have netted him a win in some scenarios, but Frieza's overwhelming power gave him a clear edge.
Megatron's ace in the hole was his antimatter, which would have
Beerus claims destruction energy can destroy matter and release energy, which is similar to antimatter. Frieza is resisted being engulfed by destruction energy and so could theoretically resist antimatter, though this is speculative. The thing about antimatter, it's not the same thing as the Hakai energy, because the Hakai energy, the significant difference is antimatter, once it comes into contact with positive matter, it basically erases it out. So it erases out like physical forms. But the Hakai energy wipes out the physical and the spiritual and like time. So basically what happens is when you use, like, let's say you wipe somebody out with antimatter, you're basically wiping out their physical body, but they'll still have their their spirit in the afterlife, and there will still be other versions of them in other timelines, right? But if you use the Hakai technique, there would be no physical trace of them, there'll be no spiritual trace of them, so there'll be no spirit in other world or anywhere else, and there will be no versions of them in another timeline unless they had a time ring or something like that. But they'll be wiped out of all of existence, which is existence erasure, which is significantly different than antimatter coming into contact with positive matter, and it's far more deadly than that. But I guess you can make more of an argument that one is like scientifically impossible to surpass, and the other one is like you could use, because it's not real, like existence erasure is not a real thing, but I do think it's more impressive. So if you can, if you can fight that back, I'm pretty sure you can fight back antimatter. And like I said, there's tons of other characters in other fictional universes that do have antimatter powers that can't, even by that logic, their energy blast would be able to wipe out and erase, the people they're hitting. But they don't really do that. It hurts them, but it doesn't wipe them out. So it really depends on how the writer, interprets that. Real life science works if that's what they put into their writing, but if not, then that's not the case. Also, I do have a problem with Frieza surviving the Hakai energy attack. I don't have a problem with what he did. I do have a problem with people's calculations and people's assumptions on it, because the argument people are making is that means that he was above Sidra, who's the Universe 9 god of destruction, because he could surpass his energy attack. One, he stated this was a bit of my power. Two, Hakai energy and the Hakai technique are two separate things. People need to understand that. The Hakai attack that he used was just it's like a ki blast, right? You have a regular ki blast. It's not the same thing as other techniques. It's just a basic energy attack. It's just gathering your energy into a basic form of just through your hand or whatever, and just firing it. It's basic, right? And the reason why I say this is because when you look at Ultra Ego Vegeta and God of Destruction Topo, they were able to obtain this energy and this power by simply just, thinking like a God of Destruction with pure destruction on their mind, and then obtaining this like godly energy that had this, destructive power that can come out. And that power is the same thing to the technique, but the technique is different. The difference is the energy itself. You can handle it if you surpass the energy itself, whereas the technique, you can't really do that. And the technique, it looks different. There would be a reason why they had the technique and the energy attack of their two separate. If they were the same thing, then they wouldn't be having mentioned thing about it specifically. And I have actually made a video on this on my channel talking about Hakai energy and the Hakai technique, and I mentioned in that those are two different abilities. The technique is way more powerful and I think more deadly than the energy attack. The energy attack is just regular, Hakai energy and regular ki are two separate things, but they basically have the same kind of properties, and it's basically just regular Hakai energy. So why would you need a whole technique of your energy attacks and you powering up naturally does that, right? I think you can do that through that way, but the technique is more impressive, more powerful, and it's harder to defend against. And I'm not saying it's a no limit fallacy where it's, it can erase anybody. You definitely would have to be stronger than the person, but I do think that the person, even if they're stronger than you, they would have to be a lot stronger, whereas in that case, you just have to be stronger than the attack itself. So I wouldn't say let's say the same technique that Beerus used on Zamasu where he wiped him out. I think if you use that, or Sidra used that technique on Frieza, he would have been obliterated. It's different than using the energy attack, because the energy attack, you can just easily surpass it. And the biggest argument I have for that is Ultra Ego Vegeta and Goku, because Goku was able to use the Hakai technique without even having Hakai energy, right? He didn't need to have the God of Destruction energy. He didn't need to think through pure destruction. He was able to use the technique. Though it's an incomplete version, that's why he didn't fully erase Zamasu. He was able to use that technique without even having the Hakai energy like Vegeta did. So those are two separate things, because by that logic, Vegeta would have been able to use the same technique, but he wasn't, and Goku would have been able to use that technique without that energy, but he was. So that's just my little argument on that.
Annihilated Frieza's ass no matter how tough it was.
And that was a real possibility. Megatron is a master tactician and manipulator with millions of years of combat experience. Frieza, on the other hand, has always relied on his raw power and intimidation to win fights.
When things don't go his way, he has a tendency to freak out.
However, Frieza has survived getting most of his body obliterated and kept going.
Which meant the antimatter wasn't a surefire win. It would have to completely cover Frieza's whole body before he could react. And Frieza was way too fast for that.
While Megatron scaled to characters who could cross galaxies, Frieza has kept up with Goku, who should be at least.
It's implied shockwaves have been grown to be a threat to numerous timelines, even though he could achieve this. Megatron and Optimus Prime struggled to match him. This implies they were both weaker than Shockwave by a notable margin. Oh, it implied shock. I thought he was talking about the Shockwave of, the clash, Goku and Beerus again. But it's implied Shockwave may have been grown to be a threat to numerous timelines. I mean, you can be a threat to numerous timelines without being on that level. If you have ability of time manipulation, sometimes when you mess with time, it can ruin multiple timelines. So it really depends on what happened. There was a comic book where there was a villain that Flash fought against, and I mentioned that in the Reverse Flash video versus Goku Black. But there was a villain that they fought who was basically going to destroy all the timelines, but he was going to destroy it by basically attacking all the Flashes. He was trying to not the Flashes, all the speedsters. So he was trying to wipe out all the speedsters throughout time and stuff, and he was keep on going through time, messing with time, and that was going to wipe out the entire timeline. So you can do it through that without actually, being on that level of power. You can just be a threat while through other means, so yeah, that's not definitive. I forgot if they put any of the other scaling there. No, they didn't. They say the cut in half thing, they didn't mention the fact that he can create a barrier, so even if he hit him and we can do that, the barrier could protect and bypass that.
At least trillions of times faster.
And on his smaller size and key force fields, Frieza had more than enough ways to avoid, defend, or survive the antimatter.
So Megatron's only option was power. While Megatron has survived planet-busting.
It says right here, notably faster, much more powerful, had plenty of defense counters, yes, his barrier and stuff, vulnerable to antimatter. Yeah, I guess you could say he's vulnerable to it. Any of them can be, but like I said, it really depends because we have other characters that have had the ability and it doesn't wipe them out, so it really depends on that. If he can resist, existence erasure, he could most possibly resist antimatter. But if we're just for argument of sake saying he can't, still his speed alone and the barrier would be enough to give him the advantage. More experienced, smarter, but even though he is, it's not going to help him out in the fight. He's just more powerful. Goku's a smarter fighter than Frieza, but Frieza's still too much of a threat for him. Physically inferior, larger size, made for a bigger target. Yeah, that's definitely more dangerous for him.
Explosions, and even fought with a being that had the energy of a universe behind it, Golden Frieza was just too much for him, considering he certainly surpassed Goku and Beerus' Punch Clash. Since Universe 7 as a whole should be over 13 times larger than our own universe, Frieza's super forms would far exceed Megatron's own power.
And that feat happened at the beginning of Dragon Ball Super. Goku has gotten leagues stronger since then, and Black Frieza is currently beyond him. There was just no way Megatron was strong enough to keep up.
Megatron was a devious foe, but Frieza's power, speed, and sheer survivability allowed him to crush the Decepticon leader underfoot.
I guess you could say Megatron was cool, but Frieza was cooler.
The winner is Frieza. Remember to click that.
So that was Death Battle's Frieza versus Megatron fight. I think that was a really great conclusion. I think they made the right decision on who was winning that. I didn't expect them to have Frieza win it, but it was a surprise to me. But I will say this, though I think that video was great, I think I agree with the conclusion and a lot of the calculations. I think they did pretty decent. There were some stuff I did disagree with, like the fact that they're trying to use the Genki Dama, where Goku's collecting the Genki energy from all the humans and stuff on Earth to the Supreme Kai's world and saying, well, that's equivalent to Frieza's energy blast. Does not make any sense because, like I said, that Genki is life energy, not what Ki is, which is just that's health energy and that's life energy. Those are two different things when it comes to power and speed. And since it comes from humans, it was basically traveling from humans. So are you saying that the humans, if they were firing off ki blast, it would be that fast? I don't think so. It doesn't really make any sense, if I'm being honest. And saying Goku, or saying he's like, well, it's Goku's technique. Well, Goku's technique is just to create it, to be able to collect it and stuff. It doesn't mean he pulls it towards him. It basically shoots to it. It is basically like all he does is basically like send a beacon for where it to go, and it picks up there. So I wouldn't put that for the speed. And then also the shockwave speed, I disagree with that too. I'm not going to go too in depth in that one again. I just don't agree that just because they're able to match it, that makes sense, because the whole, Whis thing. Then they did explain about, they did mention the barrier thing, but they said it briefly. I'm going to go look around again about what else I felt like they got wrong. Oh yeah, the antimatter thing. The antimatter is not equivalent to Hakai. Hakai would be well above it. But and the the whole Hakai energy thing, I think that's really a big debacle too. But the energy compared to the technique, I think that's really confusing, and I already made a video on that, so check it out on my channel. But besides those little key points, I didn't have too much of a problem with their calculations and stuff like that. I do think it's ridiculous to use like the battle itself, the fight in the middle. I don't agree that it would have gone that way. I think it would have been way more one-sided on Frieza's side, but this is just for animation's sake. It's not, to be taken seriously, like they stated before, that those things are just for show. It's not to actually analyze it. But yeah, just personally, I felt like it would be more one-sided on Frieza's side, and he wouldn't have been in that much danger or need to use that much power. Yeah, I think there's going to be people that disagree with it, but I think it was a pretty good conclusion. I think they do use some pretty good feats. I think they probably should have used more of the comic books, because they probably had more impressive feats, but they did use some with like, the universal stuff and stuff beyond that. But I'm really excited to see Gojo versus Maki. I haven't fully watched Jujutsu Kaisen Season 1 even yet. I watched it when it first came out. I quit because I started reading the manga, and I felt like it was kind of like the sime problem I had with Demon Slayer, where it's just like majority of the people die and everything is negative. I was just like, I've seen this too much now. Like, we've been seeing a lot of this doom and gloom, depression shit in shows. I want to see more like, even if it's not realistic, I want to see less characters dying a bunch. You can have some characters die, but too many characters die in that series, and I'm just like, I don't give a shit, so I gave up on it. I do know Gojo's very powerful with his infinity and his repulsion ability, and Maki's very powerful. I saw a couple of videos from other YouTubers, and they stated that even though Gojo is very powerful, Maki can beat him because she has like some psychic abilities, which technically would beat him if it could work on him, because even though you can't physically touch him, if you can use psychic abilities, you can beat him that way. I also wonder if he uses like his repulsion energy attack thingy. What if you were able to deflect it back at him? Would it be able to hurt him because he has the infinity thing? But it is his own energy. Would it be able to touch him or not? So I don't know that, but I'm excited for that. I want to see that. I also wish that they would do a fight between Yujiro Hanma and Akuma from Street Fighter, because they're both similar. They're both giant red-haired demonic beings that are trying to train the newer youth. One is their child, the other one is like I guess the student of his brothers, whatever, and they have like similar powers and abilities, and they're just very close to like. I think that would be pretty cool. But this one's gonna be pretty interesting. I can't wait until October 23rd when it drops out. I'm gonna check that one out. I'm voting more on Maki. A lot of people are gonna say Gojo because of his insane abilities. And like, I also haven't seen fully not Jujutsu Kaisen, but Chainsaw Man. I also quit on that because after the first episode, I thought it was pretty cool, but a couple of episodes later, I was like, this is kind of, I don't really care for it. I forgot what the main character's name is. He's kind of a simp, and he's a little bit of weirdo simp, a virgin, and I was like, he's not cool. So I gave up on that series too. But I think Maki's gonna win that. I do think Frieza was a good choice to make him win this. Also, I do want to mention Devil Artemis made the animation, because I know some people are gonna mention that. He's really great. I love Devil Artemis. He's hilarious as fuck. And they use Little Karibo, who does the voice acting for Frieza and Team 4 Star. So they did really good. That it looked nice. The animation looked the art style looked very good. I just don't really care about those in-between fights, to be honest, because they don't really have any significance to who wins besides the conclusion and the ending. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed, and stay tuned for next time.